1-007-524. Counsel not be present, please.
Kevin Franklin, the state, Your Honor.
Mary Ann Viana for the defense. The defendant, Mark Brown, is here at a custody seated to my left.
We're set for a trial at this time, a bench trial on 2 counts of disorderly conduct, 1 count of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. January 24, 2019, is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, the state wishes to make an opening statement?
Is that a way of opening, Judge?
Defense?
Yes, I would, Your Honor, briefly. So, as the court will see throughout this morning trial, that nothing happened. Nothing criminal happened. You'll hear that the defendant, Mr. Brown, was known to Officer Wilson and Officer Valdez. In fact, they arrested him just 2 hours prior for being in the courthouse. And they knew him. He has a history with the Tucson police, and not a very good history. And you'll hear about that. They went, after he was arrested, Mr. Brown went with an acquaintance and had lunch. And it was a coincidence that Officer Wilson and Miss Fisher and her child went to that restaurant. Everyone admits it was a total coincidence. Well, when Mr. Brown saw the mentor, he said something. He started filming them, as he does, as you'll hear. And that was it. He shut the camera off, and the next thing he knows, they're gone. Officer Wilson, Miss Fisher, and her child, they left. Meanwhile, he sees the officer's patrol car out in a different parking lot, adjacent. So he walks over there, because as you'll hear, that's what he does. He films policemen, he films police cars, he gets their license, that's what he does. And then he had some words with Officer Wilson, again, not criminal, and that was it. That was it. Nothing happened. There was no disorderly conduct. There certainly wasn't any contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And so you'll hear from the state's witnesses and from the defense witnesses that 2 different versions. One says there was a big commotion, such a big commotion that everyone knew and paid attention and said things and was shocked. And then you'll hear from other witnesses that were there, like, nothing happened. What? Nothing happened. So then it would be up to you to decide which version is the truth. And I think the evidence is going to show that nothing happened. Thank you.
Thank you. And is the state calling how many witnesses?
At most, 3, Judge. That would be the victim, Brianna Fisher, Officer Travis Wilson, who is a witness, and then Officer Fabian Valdez, who is the investigating officer.
Would all 3 of those witnesses please stand? Each of you please raise your right hands. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Now, I didn't hear your answer.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
All right, thank you. All right, all 3 witnesses have been sworn. Mr. Franklin, you may call your first witness.
The state calls Brianna Fisher.
Please come up to the witness stand, ma'am. You've been sworn in, you're under oath.
Actually, Judge, I'm not sure as far as defense witnesses that are present, but the state would invoke the rule at this point. So I think Officer Wilson would have to step out, but there's also...
There's 2 other witnesses, yes.
Okay, then, who are the defense witnesses?
Mr. Robert Palanas, who is here present, and Mr. Romero, who is also here present.
All right. So would the defense witnesses stand as well? Please raise your right hands, gentlemen. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay. The rule has been invoked, and what that means for all the witnesses is that unless you're testifying, unless you are designated as the victim or an investigator, or if you're the defendant, of course, you must remain outside of the courtroom until it's your turn to testify. You're also ordered to, don't leave yet, you're also ordered not to communicate with each other or anyone else involved in this case until all witnesses have testified. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everyone understand?
Yes.
All right, so those witnesses who are not otherwise exempt must leave the courtroom for now. Thank you. Brendan, you may resume.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Fisher, can you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Brianna Fisher, BriannaFisher.
Okay. I want to ask you about the events on January 24th, 2019 at the Sausage Deli. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Okay. Let's do a little foundational work here. Do you know Travis Wilson?
yes.
How do you know him?
We've been dating for 4 years.
Okay. Do you have a daughter? Is her name Kendall?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On January 24th, were all three of you going to the Sausage Deli for lunch?
Yes, I met Travis with my youngest at the Sausage Deli to eat.
Okay. Now, was that a plan you all had made prior?
Or just like an hour before I asked if he was available for lunch, and I was down in that area.
And prior to this incident, had you ever met Mark Brown?
No,
Had Kendall ever met Mark
No.
Brown? Did you have any idea what was going on with Mark Brown?
no, sir.
Okay, so when you walked into the Sausage Deli, did you recognize him?
No, sir.
Okay. And by the way, the Sausage Deli at 754 East Grant, do you happen to know if that's in the city limits of Tucson?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. So you walk into the Sausage Deli, you're gonna have lunch with Officer Wilson and your daughter. What first captures your attention as it pertains to Mark Brown?
We walked in, and I just heard somebody start saying something, Officer Wilson, and I think that's his wife or girlfriend, and that must be his kid. So I turned around and looked at him, and then I saw he had a video camera up, and my daughter at this point had walked in holding my hand. So she was below the counter, and he just kept filming and recording, so I turned around again once and said, please stop. He kept filming, and I looked.
Okay, we pause you there for a second. So you're saying, when you say him, do you see this person in the courtroom today that was filming?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
Right now?
Yep.
A shirt with a palm tree on it and
Okay.
American flag.
All right, and has he become known to you as Mark Brown?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness identified the defendant?
Yes.
All right. So you mentioned that Kendall was holding your hand when you walked in. Well, how was Kendall's emotional state prior to walking into the Sausage Deli?
She was fine prior to walking in.
Okay. And then as you walk in, Mr. Brown is saying something towards Officer Wilson. How did Kendall react? You mentioned that there was a banister there. Was she seeing what's going on? Or explain from Kendall's perspective, well, from what you could see, what Kendall's perspective was.
She just kept looking up, and I think she saw that I was kind of antsy, and I was like, what's going on? And then she started reaching up for me. When I noticed she started getting upset, Travis said, just go away for a minute, go in the bathroom. So I went in the bathroom, I picked her up, and walked to the restroom.
And what was going on during this time as far as Mark Brown's conduct? So you had mentioned that there was some commentary about, oh, that must be his wife, or his girlfriend and his kid. Did Mark Brown say anything else at that point?
He kept talking. I did not understand what he was saying. I just know he had the camera up the whole time, and then when we walked back from the restaurant, he still had the camera up, and then the whole restaurant was just quiet and looking. I remember there was a family of 4, and Mark Brown was sitting by himself at this point that I remember.
Okay.
And everyone was just kind of staring at him.
All right. So you and Kendall go to the bathroom, and then how is she doing in there? What's her emotional state in there?
I just told her we're gonna probably go somewhere else for lunch, Kendall, so let's just, I said, let's use the restroom and we'll leave. I didn't really want her to be alarmed, so.
Okay. So then you come back out of the bathroom, and what happens next?
I was carrying her, and he said, let's go and start walking out to your car.
Okay. Watch out with the pronouns, because when you say he says let's
I'm sorry.
go, who said let's
Travis.
go? Okay. So you go. So you're leaving. What is Mr. Brown doing at this point in time?
All I remember is he still held the camera up, and then once we had gotten outside the door, Mark Brown, we were walking across, just on the other side of the Sausage Deli to my car, and I remember him following out with his camera still the whole time.
Okay. And how was he holding his camera? Was he just holding his phone like people might carry their phone along, or was he holding up like he was filming?
Hold on, you both spoke at the same time.
I'm sorry.
I can
Will you repeat your
Yes, sir.
question, please?
Did you see Mr. Brown holding his camera phone?
Yes, sir.
How was he holding it?
Like he would be recording.
Okay. Have you seen the, is it defense A? What's your
The,
video?
this would be B and C.
Okay. Have you seen the videos that defense disclosed to the state? Did you have a chance to review those?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did that capture everything inside the restaurant that you experienced?
No, sir. He had his camera out the whole time.
Okay. Did it, on the first video, when you're inside the restaurant, was that your first interaction with Mr. Brown when you turned around and looked at him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But did it continue after that?
Yes, sir. I asked him twice to please stop. I turned around and said, stop. There's a kid here.
Did he stop?
No.
Did anyone else in the restaurant react in any way as far as reference to Kendall?
I believe somebody did stand up and did say, you need to stop. There's a kid here. Like, just stop.
Okay. And at this point, or as you're leaving, Kendall's up in your arms, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did she appear anxious to you at all, or was she just wanting a ride?
No, she was antsy. That's why she kept reaching up in the video. You could see her hands going up until the rest of the video must have been cut off, or I don't know what happened, but she kept reaching up for me to grab her.
Okay. So you're walking out to your car, and is that it? It's all over, or what happens next?
No, sir. He had followed us into the parking lot.
Is that Mark Brown?
Mark Brown, I'm sorry.
No problem. All right. And Mark Brown's a big guy, right? Like 6'6"? Does that seem about right?
Yeah, probably a foot or two more than me.
Okay. And Kendall, how old is Kendall?
She's 5 now.
All right. At the time, how old was she?
4?
4. Okay. So here's Mark Brown following you out to your car. Are you interacting with him at all or saying anything?
The 2 things I remember saying is, please stop, there's a kid here. And I asked twice.
Okay. And then outside the restaurant, did you?
Not 1 word.
Okay. So you go to your car and open up. Well, what happens next?
I was just strapping my daughter in, getting ready to go, and I just remember him falling. He recorded my car, my license plate, and then I got stuck in traffic.
Okay, quick pause there.
Yes,
So, so here's a strange man you don't know. How was he around your car? Was he just in one spot? Did he circle it? What did he do?
If I remember, he had walked out. He was a few feet. I mean, he wasn't that close to me when I was walking out of the restaurant. But I do remember him getting the whole vehicle and zooming in and getting my license plate.
Okay, and where was Officer Wilson at this point?
He walked to my door with me, but he was behind me for a while, and then he said, just go. He told me where I needed to go after this. And
Okay.
he was walking to his vehicle.
And how were you feeling during this entire experience?
Antsy. I don't really want my daughter or my video on any anti-police videos.
Okay. And you said you saw him walk around your car and film your whole car?
If I remember that, I know my car was all in the video.
Okay. And what makes you think he was filming your license plate?
Because he, I guess, tilted the camera towards my license plate, and in the video, he did zoom in from what he had left in the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did that cause you any concern?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Because my license plate, people can look up stuff and know my vehicle if they see my vehicle in a video online, and unfortunately don't have good, they don't like cops. I mean,
Sure.
they can
Objection,
stop this attorney.
assumption, assuming facts.
Overall, she was telling me why she was concerned. Overall.
And Ms. Fisher, you're not a police officer, right?
No, sir.
And so you had nothing to do with law enforcement activities as they pertain to Mark Brown and him being arrested or anything like that?
No, sir.
And at the time, when you were at the Sausage Deli, were you there just to get lunch?
Yes, sir.
Had nothing to do with law enforcement activity?
No, sir.
Okay. How is Kendall once you got her strapped in the car?
She just kept asking, why are we leaving? Why aren't we having lunch? And why did we run out of there, Mom?
Okay. And while you were carrying her out, Mark Brown's following you out to your car, right?
Yes, he wasn't right behind me, but he did follow us out.
All right. And you were anxious?
Yes, sir.
At that point, what did you do next?
Once we got in the vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
we left, but we did get stuck at the exit of the parking lot going back, so we were there for another minute, and I did see him still. I did see Mark Brown still recording, and turned the camera back towards my car one more time and zoomed in, and that was when I was stopped turning on to, I think it was first maybe?
Was this experience seriously disruptive to your day?
Yes, sir.
Was it scary?
Yes, sir. My kids are involved, anything scary.
Yes, no, actually, no further questions, Judge.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. So, Ms. Fisher, when you walked in with your child and Officer Wilson, you walked in through the east side entrance?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Mr. Brown was sitting right adjacent to the door?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You said that Mr. Brown immediately recognized Officer Wilson, and did he immediately say something as soon as you walked in the door?
We were only standing at the counter, I believe, for under a minute
Okay, so you were already at the counter behind the pony wall.
before I, yeah.
Okay.
Before I recognized anything going on.
And I'm handing you what has been marked Exhibit A. And if you could take a look just through them. And those pictures are an accurate, oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I approached without permission. Thank you. Are those an accurate depiction of how that restaurant looked on January 24th, 2019?
Without people there, yes.
Without people there, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's an accurate description or of the layout
I
of the
believe so.
restaurant? Okay. I'm gonna turn to one of the pictures. Here we go.
Can you clarify, counsel?
This
Is
is,
this one exhibit
this
with
is one
multiple?
exhibit.
Don't talk over the court. Is it one exhibit, multiple photographs?
yes. So this is the second photo in the exhibit that I'm gonna have you look at. And is that the, what I'm gonna call the pony wall? And behind that pony wall is the counter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you were on the other side by the counter of the pony wall?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is that photo approximately where Mr. Brown was seated?
Yes.
Okay, and your daughter is shorter than that pony wall, correct? So she couldn't have seen over it?
I'm sorry, you said, that wasn't
Yeah,
clear.
yes, ma'am.
And she couldn't have seen over the pony wall?
No.
And people who were sitting on the other side of the pony wall couldn't see her, correct?
Probably not from sitting there.
Okay. And I'm showing you the third photo in this exhibit, and that's a picture of the east entrance to the restaurant, isn't that true? Or the entrance that you went in with that day?
I believe so. I believe so. It's kind of
Okay.
hard to see.
Well, it may help if you look at another angle. Okay, so here's the fourth picture in this series, and this is taken from the east angle, correct? Maybe I'm saying the east, west, I'm sorry if I'm confusing with that.
As long as the restroom's on this side, then yes.
When you say this side,
All the way on the other side of this counter. Because it was on the other side of the door.
okay, so if this picture's taken from approximate the door
Yeah.
that you entered, that's an accurate depiction of the counter? And it's okay if you're
Yes.
getting confused on
I've
this.
only been there the one
You've only
time,
been there.
and that was it, so.
Okay, but it is true that when you walked in the door, Mr. Brown was sitting at a table, correct? You have to,
Yes.
you have to.
To
yes.
the right of me.
To the right of you,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. And here's another picture. This is the front, this is photo 5 of this series. And this is a picture of the front of the restaurant, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's Grand Street, that's adjacent, running adjacent, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And where were you parked? Were you parked in the front?
No, it was right in front of Walgreens.
Okay, okay. And for the record, Walgreens would be to the west of the restaurant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Mr. Brown, you said at one point, Mr. Brown walked towards you where you were standing behind the pony wall?
No, I never said that. I said he followed us out to the parking lot.
Okay, so you didn't say on the stand that he walked towards you?
No, not
Okay.
in the restaurant.
Okay. You also said that Mr. Brown, that other customers in the restaurant noticed what was going on,
Yes, ma'am.
and that a person actually yelled out something about, hey, there's a kid here. Is that pretty
Nobody
accurate?
yelled, but I do recall there was a family of 4 and people were saying like, this is a family, there's a kid there, stop, and I had asked him also twice.
Okay, so when you say people, who? What people?
People in the restaurant.
So was it a female, a male?
There was a family of 4, I believe it was a mother, or it was a group of 4, I believe there was 2 females and 2 males.
So which one of those yelled out?
It was one of the males.
Okay, so it was a male.
Yeah.
And where were they sitting?
If I was to the pony wall, they were directly behind me to the left.
So they were behind the pony wall.
Yeah, but to the window.
Okay, so if they're behind the pony wall, you already said that if somebody's seated behind the pony wall, they really couldn't have seen your daughter because the pony wall was taller than her, correct?
My daughter was picked up for a majority of the conversation. The first minute and a half, I believe, when we were in there, she was down.
Okay, so this male person who was sitting on the other side of the pony wall, he didn't say, hey, whatever he said. Can you repeat exactly or what you think that person
I
said?
just recall saying, there's a kid here, you need to stop, or something like that. And it was after I came back from the restroom.
That was after he
Yes.
came back from the restaurant. Okay, and you had your daughter in your hand, you're saying?
Yes, I picked her up from the pony wall and walked her to the restroom, and she stayed in my arms the whole time until I got her to the vehicle.
Okay, and where was Mr. Brown at that point?
He was sitting in his chair.
So he was still sitting?
Correct.
So you're saying that the whole time before you went to the bathroom, Mr. Brown never got up?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and he was still sitting when you came back from the bathroom?
Yes, ma'am.
And was there someone sitting at the table with him?
I don't recall seeing anybody with him.
So do you believe that he was alone at the table?
I thought he was alone. It was a lot to take in, so
Okay.
if there was somebody with him, he was sitting straight forward. He was not sitting towards the table, so I just recall him sitting.
Okay.
facing it.
So at no point before you left the restaurant, is it true that he was sitting the whole time?
Before we left the restaurant, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall, Mr. Officer Wilson, after Mr. Brown said, oh, you're tracking me? Or, I'm gonna back up. Let me clarify, strike that. Do you recall Mr. Brown saying something to the effect of, when you first walked in, oh, what are you tracking me? Or what are you following me? Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you recall Officer Wilson saying something like, no, it's just my lucky day, I guess?
I don't think so, but I don't remember.
Okay. No more questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any redirect, Mr.
Oh,
Franklin?
one more thing. I'd like to admit what's been marked as Defense Exhibit A.
Any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit A is admitted. Any redirect, Mr.
Yeah, I guess, yes. Just my first witness.
Yes.
Alright, Mr. Chair, I'm going to show you this marked as State's Exhibit A, and I have to turn to, there's multiple pages here, but call page 1, 2, turn to page 3. There's some doors there, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you and Kendall walked in through that doorway, she would not be invisible, right?
No, sir.
Okay, so people could see her walking through?
Yes, sir.
Alright, and then when you went to the bathroom, again, she wasn't like hidden under a cloak or something, right?
No, sir. She was in my arms.
Okay. And as far as the interaction between Mark Brown and yourself and Kendall, you agree it wasn't shouting and yelling, right?
No, sir.
So if someone was, for instance, back in the kitchen, would it be possible that they didn't hear what was going on?
Yeah, nobody was yelling.
Okay. But it certainly caught the attention of people in the restaurant, right?
Yes, sir.
And it caught your attention.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, if we see a little girl in the video peeking around that pony wall, who's standing right next to you, is that Kendall?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So she was, if you see her peeking around looking in Mark Brown's direction, would that indicate to you that she's aware that Mark Brown is there?
Objection, speculation.
Withdrawn.
If there was an answer that I didn't hear, that's correct.
Okay. Kendall doesn't have any visual impairment, does she?
No, sir.
Doesn't have any auditory impairment?
No, sir.
So if you could hear Mark Brown, there's no reason to indicate that she couldn't hear Mark Brown, correct?
No, sir.
Nothing further, Judge.
And before I ask a couple of questions for you, did Mr. Brown ever say anything to you personally, directly to you?
Not directly to me, no, sir.
Did Mr. Brown ever say anything directly to Kendall?
No, sir.
Who arrived into the restaurant first, you or Officer Wilson?
We both, got out of our vehicles together. He parked and I parked and we walked in together.
And was he in uniform?
Yes, sir.
Did you, without telling me what was said, did you hear any conversations, if any, between Mr. Brown and Officer Wilson?
Yes, sir.
Did they both speak to each other?
I guess, yes, sir.
When did you first notice that Mr. Brown was recording you with his phone, I assume?
Yes, sir. It was when, I heard Officer Wilson and his wife or girlfriend and kid, and I instantly turned around and then saw his video, or his phone or video camera.
And I'd like you to, if you can, describe how it was that Mr. Brown was holding his phone. In what position?
In his hand.
So you got your left hand up in front of you, or whichever hand it was?
Yes.
Do you know which hand it was?
I don't
Okay,
remember which
yeah.
hand it was.
But his hand was up in front of him?
Yes, it was up like he was recording straight forward.
Did he say something to you about, that it was being recorded?
No, sir.
And was the screen portion of the camera toward Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir.
How long were you in the restaurant before you decided to leave?
It was no more than a few minutes that I recall. Enough time for us to stand there and, me go to the restroom with my daughter, come back out, and then probably within 30 seconds after that, we decided just to leave.
And when you got to the car, Kendall was asking why you were leaving and not having lunch?
Yes, sir.
At some point, sounds like you said Mr. Brown was outside the restaurant.
Yes, sir.
Describe your exit and his exit and what that sequence might have been.
Myself and Kendall left the restaurant. Travis followed probably 20 seconds behind just to make sure I got out there. And then Mark Brown had come out of the restaurant and walked toward the parking lot towards the vehicles, and Travis was just making sure we got in the car, telling me where I needed to go, and Mark Brown was behind.
And was Officer Wilson in a patrol vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And your vehicle's parked close by?
Like straight across.
Okay.
So Travis was on Grant and I was parked right in front of the Walgreens.
And when Mr. Brown came outside, you said he was still recording?
He still held his camera up like he was recording, the whole time that we were there.
Same position you described before?
Yeah, I mean, it was still in his hand like he was recording the screen towards him.
Did you ever see any point where you put the camera down or up?
I don't recall that.
So there was no shouting or yelling inside the restaurant. How about outside the restaurant? Any shouting or yelling by anyone?
No, sir.
That's all the questions the court has. Mr. Franklin, do you have any follow-up based on the court's questions?
I do, Judge. Ms. Fisher, he didn't speak directly to you, but you heard him talking about you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you heard him talking about Kendall.
Yes, sir.
And you could hear that.
Yes.
And he was referring to Officer Wilson, for instance, as Officer Oinky, or no, Criminal Oinky
Yes, sir.
during the encounter. Okay. This is a comparatively short period of time, but was it scary?
Yes, sir.
If we see a vehicle in a video that gets shown later on, what was your vehicle, what color and type?
Like a charcoal gray Chevy Equinox small SUV.
And you've reviewed the video, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that your vehicle that we see at the very end of the videos that were disclosed?
Yes, sir.
Nothing further, Judge.
Anything else, Ms. Bion?
Yes, Your Honor. If I could approach the witness with exhibit 1. Ms. Fisher, I'm showing you exhibit 1 again, those photos. And just to clarify where you were parked. Let's see if I can get a better one. This is the 5th photo of this exhibit, and it's a photo taken from, it looks like the east side of the restaurant towards the west side of the restaurant, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, and the Walgreens parking lot is on the west side of the
Yes,
restaurant? And from that angle, you really can't see much of the parking lot, right?
not from this angle.
Okay, and you said that you were how big is that parking lot?
I'm not sure. It's not very big. I parked by Walgreens, which is to the, off of First.
Okay, so that would be like the front row right in front of Walgreens?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and where did Officer Wilson park the patrol car? Do you remember?
The row off of Grant Street in front of my